A political earthquake has struck Britain, shaking the very foundations of Keir Starmer's leadership. In an unprecedented ruling, the Supreme Court has exposed a secret plot that could have reshaped the UK's relationship with the EU without public approval, without Parliament's consent. This explosive revelation has sent shockwaves through Westminster, unraveling what many are now calling Starmer's covert plan to reverse Brexit. Can Starmer survive this crisis, or is this the beginning of the end? In a historic turn of events that has sent shockwaves across the political landscape, the UK Supreme Court has delivered a devastating blow to Keir Starmer's leadership. The court ruling uncovered a hidden agenda, one that could have quietly aligned the UK with EU regulations without the consent of Parliament, the public, or even a shred of democratic transparency. Legal experts have described this ruling as nothing short of brutal, a stark indictment of what has been seen by many as a covert attempt to erode Britain's sovereignty. Starmer, who had publicly championed stability and pragmatism, was caught off guard as the court exposed a far darker agenda. Behind closed doors, his administration had begun taking steps to embed the UK into EU-aligned frameworks. These weren't minor policy adjustments, but sweeping changes that critics now describe as a thinly veiled attempt to rejoin the European Union. In effect, Starmer had been overseeing a covert plan to bypass parliamentary scrutiny, all while claiming to be pragmatic and reasonable. The ruling, which stemmed from a challenge initiated by constitutional watchdogs and backed by Brexit campaigners, declared that these actions represented a gross abuse of power, a violation of democratic principles, and, most damagingly, a constitutional breach. The court made it clear that such significant shifts in sovereignty, especially ones aimed at realigning the UK with the EU, must be openly debated and approved by Parliament. Without this, it would be impossible to claim legitimacy. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Nigel Farage, never one to hold back, immediately labeled the ruling as a watershed moment and accused Starmer of the ultimate betrayal of Brexit. Senior Tory figures were quick to echo the sentiment, with some even going so far as to call Starmer a rogue operator in a lawyer's costume. Yet, the most shocking fallout came from within Starmer's own party. Leaked reports revealed that many members of Starmer's shadow cabinet were completely unaware of the operation. Several MPs in constituencies that had supported Leave expressed fury at what they saw as nothing short of political suicide. One described it as a betrayal of the highest order. As these internal rifts began to surface, Labour's communications team tried to downplay the issue, calling the ruling merely a legal clarification. But that narrative quickly crumbled. Legal analysts made it clear this was no simple misstep, no technical issue. It was a monumental failure of governance. With growing pressure mounting from within the Labour Party, demands for a full investigation reached a fever pitch. MPs called for the release of all communications between Starmer's office and EU officials, speculating that these secretive discussions may have begun much earlier than anyone had anticipated. What emerged next was even more damning. A leaked, documented confidential strategy roadmap confirmed critics' worst fears. This wasn't an accidental oversight. This was a deliberate, calculated attempt to sidestep the democratic process entirely. The roadmap, which had been signed off by senior Starmer advisors, proposed methods of embedding EU regulations into UK law through non-legislative means. These methods would bypass Parliament and avoid media scrutiny, all in the name of trade cooperation. The implications of this strategy were clear. Starmer had been playing a high-stakes game with Britain's future, and the stakes had just gotten much higher. The situation inside Labour deteriorated further. Emergency meetings were convened, with some frontbenchers even threatening to resign. Angela Rayner, a key Labour figure, was reportedly furious, warning that this could cost Labour the next general election. She was not alone in her concerns. Insiders claimed that she felt completely sidelined by Starmer's secretive operation. Meanwhile, outside pressure was growing. Reform UK, the political group led by Farage, launched a national campaign accusing Starmer of betraying the very people who had voted for Brexit. The Conservatives seized on Labour's turmoil, turning the screw with increasing ferocity. The ruling from the Supreme Court had set an important legal precedent. Governments cannot enter into major international agreements, especially those that affect sovereignty, without Parliament's approval. However, this legal victory was only the beginning. Whistleblowers within Labour painted a chilling picture of a party operating under a secretive, paranoid culture. Staff had been instructed to avoid keeping written records and were told to use coded language when discussing sensitive matters. Public consultation was seen as a threat to the operation's secrecy. and democratic transparency was sacrificed at the altar of political strategy. With this mounting pressure, Starmer's public defense was weak and unconvincing. Addressing the public in a scripted statement, he denied any wrongdoing, but his refusal to answer questions only deepened suspicions. The performance, robotic and evasive, left many wondering if this was the face of a leader on the verge of collapse. Labour's lead in the polls began to evaporate, while Reform UK surged in popularity, largely thanks to Farage's aggressive campaign. As Labour HQ scrambled to deal with the crisis, staff worked frantically to scrub digital records and assess the potential legal risks of the leaks. But the more they tried to cover their tracks, the deeper the public's mistrust grew. The question now was no longer whether Starmer could recover, but whether he could even survive the month. What had initially been a legal challenge had transformed into a full-blown political crisis. Could Starmer hold on to his leadership, or would the weight of his secret dealings lead to his downfall? Behind the scenes, murmurs of a leadership challenge began to circulate. Names like Wes Streeting, Lisa Nandy, and Angela Rayner were floated as potential alternatives to Starmer, but no formal challenge had yet been launched. Still, the tension was palpable. Starmer's grip on the party appeared to be weakening. With each passing day, meanwhile, journalists uncovered even more damning revelations: secret meetings between Labour officials and EU representatives in discreet locations across Europe. These discussions, which initially appeared technical, were now understood to be far more politically charged, covering topics like regulatory alignment and environmental benchmarks that had the potential to significantly alter the UK's relationship with the EU. One particularly eye-catching proposal suggested that Britain could rejoin an EU agency, but under the title of Strategic Observer, a move that would require full regulatory compliance with EU laws without the formality of EU membership. These revelations painted a picture of a coordinated effort, one that involved not only Starmer's advisors but also civil servants and EU legal specialists, all working in concert to sidestep Parliament's authority, with the political storm intensifying. Starmer took to the airwaves, delivering a scripted statement that was supposed to calm the rising tide of suspicion. But instead of answering questions, he deflected, dodged, and avoided any meaningful engagement with the public. This only served to fuel the narrative that his leadership was unraveling. The question now remains: can Starmer recover from this seismic political disaster, or has the damage already been done? As leaks continue to surface, the political pressure on him intensifies, and the future of his leadership hangs by a thread. With the stakes higher than ever, the clock is ticking. How much longer can Keir Starmer hold on before the political crisis consumes him whole? As the story continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the UK's political landscape is forever changed. Stay tuned, because what happens next could reshape Britain's future in ways we never saw coming.